podcast. I'm your host, Addison. In our journey to master bonsai, we talk a lot about the artists, the trees, and the techniques, but what about the tools that we use every single day? That essential interface between our hands and the tree. My guest today is John Kim, the owner of Joshua Roth Tools. If you've been to a major bonsai show, convention, or styling competition in the US, you've absolutely seen his company's support. Joshua Roth is a pillar of the American bonsai community. I wanted to bring John on to hear his story of acquiring this iconic brand, explore his philosophy of giving back to the bonsai ecosystem, and for all of us gearheads, do a deep dive into what actually makes a great tool. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Addison.
Before we dive into things, I just wanted to thank you again for all your support with that Joshua Roth gives to the community. The Pacific Bonsai Expo and the New Talent Competition at the Rendezvous are two things that I've really, really enjoyed, and definitely both of those events have felt your presence. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that aspect of what I'm able to do with this company. And it's actually one of the reasons why one of the many reasons why we ended up going in this direction and working on acquiring the Joshua Roth brand. There was already a history there of supporting things like that, whether it's events or new talent or whatever. And those things were important to us and very much in line with our values. So we are privileged to be able to support the community.
Yeah. Why don't we chat a little bit about that right off the bat? We chatted at the Rendezvous in the vendor area after the competition, and I did not know the story of the kind of acquisition of Joshua Roth, and I actually didn't even realize that it was so recent that you had made the purchase of the company. So could you kind of walk us through a little bit of what that experience was like and kind of where you're at now?
Sure. So I'll try not to make it long because I could spend 2 hours talking about how it happened. But kind of to make a long story short, right smack in the middle of COVID, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and on the Eighth Symmetry podcast with Ryan Neal, he had Ken Carlson at the time, the owner of Joshua Roth, as a guest, and they were chit-chatting things about tools and the brand. And there was a mention during that podcast that Ken may be interested in retiring, and if the right folks came along to acquire the business, he'd be willing to talk about it. And so I happened to listen to that podcast on the way to my office. And so when I got to my office, I emailed Ken at the email address that they left. And I said, look, I'm kind of interested. I don't know anything really about the company, the financials, the size, the scope, but if you're willing to talk to me, that would be great. And he emailed me back right away and said, yeah, let's talk. And so I had a couple of conversations, which evolved into going to go visit him and the operation and kind of seeing it for ourselves. And at the time, my wife had lost her job during COVID. She was working at a private college. And during COVID with admissions down and stuff, blah, 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 she was out of work. So we're kind of exploring different things and opportunities for her to do as well. And so once we visited and we saw the operation and the scope of work, it felt doable. We had some major challenges, the biggest one being the financials to acquire the business, but that's a different topic. So anyway, made a couple of visits. We ended up spending about a week or so up there, kind of shadowing him for a whole week, making sure that we felt comfortable that if this goes through, that it was going to be a good handoff. And after 3 or 4 visits and about 18 months, we got to move the business. It was previously located in Oregon, and we moved it back down to Southern California. So now Joshua Roth is back in Southern California. It had originally started in kind of that Central California area 40 years ago. And so now it's back. And so we're very excited. And again, I feel very fortunate that not only did I hear the opportunity by listening to a podcast, but the previous owner, Ken, responded to me, to a nobody. It's not like I'm a bonsai professional or one of the existing dealers or retail stores selling the product. I was literally just some random guy emailing him, and he gave me the time of day, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of where we are now. It's been about 3 years, and we feel very, very fortunate and blessed.
Awesome. Were there things that you wanted to preserve about the company and things that you wanted to change or move in a different direction? Did you have any strong feelings around those types of things as you were making the purchase, or Were there things that Ken felt really strongly about preserving, like in choosing the new owner? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why we acquired the Joshua Roth brand and the company was because it had such a good reputation within the industry, within the hobby, and that's highly valued. When I was in the process of the initial process early on of trying to make the numbers work, the financials work, because I wasn't sitting on a pile of money. And so I was kind of talking to different friends that are business owners and things like that, trying to figure out, should I borrow money from friends and family? Should I go get a loan? Should I find a venture capitalist? Those kinds of things. And a lot of the feedback I got was, why are you buying a company? You could just buy the inventory from Japan, find your own suppliers, and not have to pay the quote unquote fee for the brand recognition, right? And they say, you could do this for a fraction of the cost of buying the business. Instead, just start your own. And like, he's going out of business. He's going to retire. Just go start your own brand and bring in high quality Japanese tool. And that was some of the feedback that I got from my friends and experts that are into this sort of thing on a regular basis. And so my pushback to that was, I was not interested in starting a company. Like, that's not where this whole notion came from. I know that some of the other folks that were interested in buying Joshua Roth were either larger companies looking to eat up a smaller company, which is the American dream, or they were folks with money, with wealthy backgrounds, individuals who were interested in taking on another business, things like that. And so I was coming at it from a very different perspective, very different position. I was coming at it as a hobbyist that knew of the brand, that respected the brand, and part of me wanted to continue that legacy. And so I respected that a lot. And that is what I shared with the owner at the time. I said, look, I'm going to try my best to continue what you've built. And just to be clear, the person that I purchased the business from isn't the original owner. He's actually the third or fourth owner of Joshua Roth, but he owned it the longest. He had it for, I think, 25 years or so.
Wow.
And he's the one that really turned a really small kind of import distribution business into a much larger nationally and internationally recognized brand. And so I had a lot of respect for him, a lot of respect for the company. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the things that the company was doing already for the hobby and the industry, I respected. So all of those things was my top priority to preserve and continue. And so like that's all the stuff that I felt strongly about maintaining. And then your other question was things that I wanted to change. If anybody's been to the joshuaroth.com website, you may notice it's a little bit dated. It might feel like the Matrix, because that's literally when the website was built. And the last major update, the homepage, is from the Artisan's Cup, and that was 10 years ago. And so one of the kind of low-hanging fruit at the time when I was doing my research of the company was there was a lack of social media presence. The website was outdated, to put it bluntly. And so and there was no kind of a spokesperson or industry professionals that were speaking about the brand, other than Ryan Neal. Like, that's one of the things that, I had noticed in my 10, 12, 13 years of doing bonsai as a hobbyist was, I would watch Ryan's videos on YouTube and he would just kind of slip it in there like, oh yeah, my Joshua Roth tools, I've had this thing for 20 years, and kind of just slide it in there and like, not intentionally, but endorse a brand or a product that he normally doesn't do. And so like that said a lot. And then when I started looking into it and speaking to other people about the brand, I noticed here in Southern California, as well as a lot of other places, people would say very positive things about the brand. So I wanted to kind of amplify that and make it a little more obvious. I don't know if that's the right word, that this is a good product. It's a good company. And my hope was that people would know that Joshua Roth, the company, is alive and well and continuing to thrive. And, you mentioned that people would have heard or seen us at a lot of the major conventions and shows. And that was one of the things that I have in the last 3 years put a lot of effort and intentionality behind, is to be visible to the public and the masses. So, it's kind of a win-win for me, because I'm doing some marketing, if you want to call it that, and letting people know that Joshua Roth is alive and well, but also to use that opportunity to continue to support the community and up and coming artists and all of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And in a way that, there are no other tool companies that are doing that in the US in the same way, right? Which, definitely your presence is felt. So it's kind of funny whenever you mention that you kind of were approaching buying this business as a hobbyist, the first thing that came to my mind was, you're the king of side hustles within bonsai. Because in the past, I've done things like, oh, get into pottery or like think about getting into stand making. But you took it another step further and got into bonsai and then got into running a whole business related to bonsai. So I'm actually very curious about that overall journey, as we are going to need more people to do things like that if we want the pursuit of bonsai excellence in the United States to grow, right? We can't always rely on everything from Japan or China for pots and things like that. So I'm very interested in like, how does bonsai as like a business and organization grow in the US? And so, yeah, I think that path that you took is very interesting, and I hope that there's more people that take that path in the future as well.
Yeah, actually, in hindsight, it was probably really dumb, but it was one of those things where all the stars aligned. Like I would have, if you would have asked me in 2019, like, hey, do you think you would be in the industry? I would have laughed. I said, no way. Like I'm barely keeping up as a hobbyist, or to even take it a step further and say, be the owner of a nationally, internationally recognized brand within I would have laughed too. Like, there's no way that that's ever going to happen. But yeah, here we are. So again, I can't think of a better word than to say that I'm blessed and very fortunate.
Yeah, definitely a unique experience. So, well, I had two things I wanted to ask. One was, can you describe a little bit more your bonsai practice leading up to the purchase and now? How many trees do you have? Is there a certain species you really like? Are you studying with anyone?
Well, again, I'll try to keep this brief, but I initially got into the hobby because I have a wide interest in plants, a variety of different types of plants. I know you had mentioned in the past that you were into aquascaping, and we kind of chatted about that briefly, but I do underwater gardening inside fish tanks. I belong to Orchid Society, Bromeliad Society, Carnivorous Plant Society, and all these different clubs that are all related to plants. And then I stumbled onto bonsai because we were renting a house, so I had a little bit more space. And I wanted to, I had the opportunity now to try to grow some things outdoors. And so, yeah, I started bonsai, back maybe 13, 14 years ago. But I don't count those first couple of years because I didn't really study under anybody. I didn't take it seriously. I was just dabbling in it, buying things from Facebook Marketplace or Home Depot, things like that, and just killing everything that I touched. But it was a good experience to at least find the various resources, whether they were books, magazine, YouTube channels, things like that. But I didn't join a club right away. I didn't take workshops right away or anything like that. So for the first few years, I just kind of stumbled around that. And then um, one day I was just looking at bonsai clubs or something like that. I was just Googling stuff. And then one of my local clubs, Baikoen, uh, was advertising on either their social media or their website that they were going to do a club dig, a collecting trip. It said members only. I'm like, oh shoot, I need to go join this club. So I emailed them. I said, look, I'm not a member, but I'd like to join your upcoming collecting trip. If I join now, can I participate? And they responded right away. And they said, you know what? Just bring your membership application and your dues to the collecting trip, and you're good to go. We'll welcome you in. I'm like, wow, this is great. So that's kind of how I got to become a part of Bikoen, and that is what I consider my home club. I belong to several other bonsai societies, some of them out of state, just because I want to support them by being a dues paying member and also getting access to their Zoom meetings and things like that. But anyway, so yeah, I joined that club, and it turned out it was probably the perfect club for me. So again, another example of stars aligning. The main reason my admission is that I joined the club to go on this collecting trip. I had no intentions of really becoming a member of the club. So what happened at this collecting trip was my truck got stuck in the mud. I was actually leaving a little bit early because we had another thing to get to that afternoon. So we went there super early in the morning, collected for a couple hours, and I was going to bounce. In the process of leaving, my truck got stuck in some mud. And then we spent the next couple of hours with the help of a bunch of other club members getting my truck out. And they were so nice about it, right? I mean, like they're tired, they've been collecting all morning, blah, blah, blah. And then now they're helping me dig a truck out of the mud. And so we got out of there so late. We didn't make it to my other event, but there was a club meeting like the next week, like the regular monthly meeting. And I decided, you know what? These guys are super cool. And so, I went to the meeting. Nobody remembered my name. Everybody said, oh yeah, you're the guy that got stuck in the mud. And so that's kind of how I started my reputation at the bike and club meetings. And then I went to my first meeting, had a good time. People were super friendly. The presentation was great. They had a great little snack table. Like, this is cool. And so even though the club meetings were, I think at the time they were about 45 minutes away from my house. They weren't close. It wasn't convenient. There were probably 10 other bonsai clubs that were a shorter distance or drive. But I went to Baikuen because the people were great and I had a great experience. Not long after, the GSBF Bonsai-a-thon happened. So, I think it's in February every year, but anyway, it's a major event at the collection at the Huntington Library, and there was a call for volunteers. They said, hey, our club cooks the lunches for the vendors and the volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, we've got these various volunteering opportunities, blah, blah, blah. Joe was in charge of that. So I reached out to Joe. I said, hey, I'm new, but I'm interested in helping. You tell me, what can I do? He goes, why don't you come help make lunch? And so, I did that. I started helping out. And the other thing that I got to know and realize was that this club in particular had a really strong sense of volunteerism. They really step up to the plate regardless of what the event is. They show up in numbers. The members are active. They're happy to volunteer. They contribute to the club. And even when adjacent clubs and other neighboring clubs are doing things, a lot of the bike club members show up to support. And so, like, I don't know, it was just like this perfect serendipitous thing where I met the right people at the right time and we really jived. And so Joe now, Big Joe, is the president of Bikeland, and I've been going there ever since. I think it's probably been about 8, maybe 9 years since I
Wow.
joined the club. And then the other thing that happened, I'm rambling, so you feel free to interrupt me to tell me to shut up at any time. But the other thing that happened was this actually started right before COVID, so maybe around 2018, 19. Tom was starting a YouTube channel. And I was like, hey, this is really cool. Like, I learned on YouTube. I appreciate YouTube. And somebody at this club is really taking that by the horn and doing a good job producing YouTube content. And then COVID hit and he took it to the next level because he had a bunch of recorded videos and stuff that he didn't have time to edit or he fell behind or whatever. And during COVID, he was able to pump stuff out. And since then, he hasn't stopped. So he is pumping out all kinds of super fun, amazing content on YouTube. Maybe this is a shameless plug for the Bikecoin YouTube channel, but like he's become kind of pretty well known because he gets to travel quite a bit for work and he's always looking for bonsai professionals and nurseries and events whenever he's traveling. And so there's a lot of content on there from visiting gardens and nurseries all over the country, from Hawaii to Florida and everything in between. So anyway, I'm just going to stop now because otherwise we're going to keep going.
No, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I have the same kind of relationship with my club where the East Bay Bonsai Society, even though I kind of moved out of Oakland and it's a little bit farther for me, I have to cross the bridge. Um, I just feel that the people there are so special, and it really did strike me that they do show up in en masse for volunteering and events. Like, it's just such a healthy club, I guess you could say, where it's not just one person shouldering all the load. Like, everybody's really helping out and contributing to this great culture that we have within the club. So it there's probably other clubs out there like that, like your experience at Bikecoin, but it's really nice to be a part of a special group of people like that.
Nah, mine's the best. There's nobody like Bison. I'm just kidding. Actually, to tell you the one more thing just to add to that is, so since I started Bikecoin, I actually changed jobs, and my current job, my office, if I were to go from my office to the club meeting, it's about 3 hours and I still make the trek.
Wow.
So yeah, shout out to my Bikecoin people.
Yeah, when you find that group, you got to stick with them.
Yeah. I'll answer your other question about trees. So I don't have any show trees. part of that was when I was traveling back and forth to Oregon to acquire the Joshua Roth business. I left my plants under the care of somebody else. And unfortunately, they did not water my plants, sometimes for 2 weeks at a time. And so any of my nicer material that was either in a shallow pot or a ceramic pot or even a training container, whether it's a wooden box or plastic or mica pot, those all died. And so the only things that I was left with were things that were still in nursery cans, deeper pots or something like that, or just, plain garden, potting soil. Most of those things survived, but all my nicer stuff died about 3 years ago. And so I've kind of started rebuilding my collection, but I'm finding that I don't have as much time right now in this season to take care of the trees as well as I should. And so I'm intentionally not acquiring anything really nice until I get my feet under me and get some other things settled down a little bit first. But, I've got, a total of maybe 12 or 15 things you can call a tree, versus a stick in a pot, and I've got probably another 20 or 30 things that are a stick in a pot. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but it is what it is. But I'm hoping that in the next year or two, I can start picking up some nicer stuff. And the funny thing is, when I look at trees that are like $500 or $1,000, I'm like, oh, that's out of my budget. And then I go and sponsor and pay for all the demo trees for an event for, $1,500, $2,000 as a donation to an event. It's like the math isn't mathing here, but that just, anyway, that's where I'm at.
That's terrible that you had that experience with your trees. I'm sorry. But yeah, you can get back in the saddle once things kind of settle down, and then you've still got your trees that you can, continue to grow.
Yep. And I'm just looking forward to it because like you and I talked about briefly, I have a very strong personal opinion that if you're practicing what's quote unquote bonsai, the Japanese practice, the element of showing and sharing your tree is very important. So I do hope and want to get there sooner than later.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I understand there's like a marketing aspect to sponsoring events and promotion of the business, but I think the way that you show up kind of shows that there's something a little bit deeper than that. And I think like your intentionality around what types of events you sponsor is interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about what drives you to help support these events and how you kind of choose the events that you think are meaningful within the bonsai community?
So one of I can put it very selfishly. I support the things that I like. So whether it's a podcast, a YouTube channel, a website, event, competition, I gravitate towards things that I personally enjoy and want to see those things continue. But I alluded to the fact that I belong to a lot of different organizations and societies, and I am a firm believer that the front door or the opening of the funnel needs to be very wide for any kind of hobby or club, because there is inevitably um, an issue of retention or a revolving door where people come and go for various reasons. And the only way to maintain or grow a club or an organization or a hobby in general is to continuously have an inflow of new people, new interests, new budgets, and also new ideas. And so, you participated in the GSPF Rendezvous Rising Stars competition, right? And the focus or the idea behind that one in particular was, let's find up and coming, more advanced hobbyists who may be interested in getting more involved with giving presentations or teaching workshops or volunteering at higher level facilities. Let's give them an opportunity to shine. And so like that, I thought that was a great idea. It wasn't my idea. I believe that was Michael Roberts' brainchild. And when he kind of pitched the idea to me, I said, yes, that it's hitting all the right boxes. Look, that's perfect. Let's do it. And the beauty of the GSBF is that even though it's called a Golden State Bonsai Federation, it involves clubs from other states. So for the folks that don't know, it's kind of an umbrella organization of clubs. It's a club of clubs. And so, the membership of the GSBF are other clubs. And so, the idea was let's kind of divide those clubs into regions, break it up into 6 or 7 regions and have, a representative, so to speak, your champion come and compete at the rendezvous. And I just thought that was a brilliant idea. One, it's fun, right? You can kind of nominate and pick somebody to send, to go compete. And then also that person gets to showcase their talent. The other part that I personally really enjoy is I'm not a good quote unquote bonsai artist. I'm not good at styling trees, and I'm not just being humble. I literally am not good at it, right? Especially in you experience a short time frame. Like it's hard. And so, me getting to watch other people that are able to do it is like me watching an artist, like graffiti. I've watched graffiti artists paint murals, and things like that, or oil painting artists, or even like the guys at the theme park that are drawing caricatures. Like I find that so amazing because I can't do it. And there they are doing it, and they're doing it so quickly, and like just boggles my mind, and it just tickles me in all the right places. And so like I really enjoyed that about the Rising Stars competition. The other one that we support that's super fun is in Texas. The Lone Star Bonsai Federation does an annual event, and they do a team competition where I think it's either in teams of 2 or 3, kind of take turns styling a tree, and like that's super fun because now it's a team effort, a little round robin type of thing, musical chairs. Like that's super cool, and the end product is just so different. And then, on the other side of the country, ABS also does a new talent competition that's kind of more open to the general public. I think there's a limitation on how long you've practiced bonsai because the idea is to get, newer hobbyists to try it out, the competition stuff. So it's a little bit wider in acceptance. Anybody can apply, but you do have to, pay for your own travels to attend the ABS seminars and then participate in the live demo, so to speak, of making the trees. So I think that's really good because it's a good experience for everybody. It's a good experience for the artists that are involved to feel or to experience what it's like to work under pressure and to design and come up with an initial styling that can be very challenging. It's great for the club or the host organizing because most of the time those materials, the finished product gets auctioned off and those proceeds go back to helping fund, the organization's mission. And then the audience as well. It's super fun to just watch this. And then, one of the things, the format that I like about the Rising Stars at GSPF is that it is, you guys are there, kind of just in the open and exposed, and people can sit down right in front of you and watch what you're doing, and you can interact with those people. Like that format is super fun for me. So anyway, again, apologies for rambling, but those are all the kinds of things that I like, and I hope that more people feel encouraged to participate. I'm not gonna lie, it is a very difficult thing to do, but if you do it, I have yet to hear negative feedback from anybody that's ever participated.
Yeah, from the perspective of a participant, like I hope there's more of these types of events that pop up. We're thinking about doing something for the East Bay Club, for example, just like within the club. There is the aspect of like, oh, bonsai isn't made in 8 hours. Like it's a very iterative process over years. But I think the skill set that you need to be able to do that type of operation is very complementary to the actual skill set of building high quality bonsai, right? Like if you don't have certain wiring proficiency, you're not going to be able to complete that operation within the time period specified, right? So I think it's such a way to boost and encourage and motivate artists within the scene to improve. And yeah, I think it's also like launched visibility of a lot of people within the community, right? People show up and see what these folks can do and are impressed, and it's just a touch point for them to get to showcase along their journey. So I loved the event. I thought it was a blast, and I hope that we have more opportunities to do that within the bonsai community because I think it can be an important part of helping the practice grow. And I thought I was very impressed with all the trees that were put together, and I think it's a good sign for bonsai in general that we're getting these bigger groups of people that can put together really compelling trees. And, it seems like it's only growing the number of people that are dedicating themselves to bonsai in a way to be able to do that.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And like I mentioned earlier, Joshua Roth as a company was already supporting these types of things. And so I just feel so blessed to be able to continue that.
So you kind of see bonsai from a little bit of a unique lens, like more directly seeing the business and finance side of it. So I'm curious, what's your data telling you, or what's your perspective on bonsai in the US in general, since you took over the company and started getting a unique view into it?
There's a lot to talk about there, but I will say that one of the very exciting things for me has been seeing it grow. Just with COVID, there was this spike in hobby activities, a lot of them related to plants. So if folks aren't aware, like the house plant market and industry absolutely exploded, like thousands of percent. Bonsai had a similar spurt. And so my concern actually in the process of acquiring Joshua Roth was anticipating that there was going to be a cool down as people go back to work, as the COVID money dries up. I had a realistic approach that there's probably going to be a dip. And I'm not going to lie, there has been in the economy of purchasing tools and trees and things like that. But the reason I am strongly of the opinion that the hobby is growing is there are more clubs forming. So I am every year hearing of just me, at my limited exposure, 2, 3, 4 clubs every year, new clubs forming throughout the country. And I am hearing about new nurseries opening and new shows, right? So even just within the last 2 years, so we've had Bonsai Central pop up, and that was an amazing show in the middle of the country, as the name suggests. And the rumor is they're gearing up. They've got a date set and they're working on a venue for the next one. So that's super exciting. The ABS Learning Seminars has been selling out all of their available workshop spaces, which didn't happen in the past. So part of that is the new leadership involved and the new effort that they're putting in, but also because I think the overall hobby and industry is healthy. And then if you were at Nationals a month or so ago, they were announcing that there is a national tropical bonsai show coming up. I think that's going to be in Texas next year, I believe, in September. So there's a brand new national level show specifically for tropical species, and then of course we know that PBE's been around now for 2 shows, and that's an absolutely amazing show on the West Coast. And so I am also on the board for ABS, the American Bonsai Society, and we had a board meeting a few weeks ago, and there's actually a concern that there's too many events going on and that dates are starting to overlap, and we need to be cognizant and considerate that we're not overlapping each other with major events, regional or national level events. And like that is like such a great problem to have, in my opinion. It's because if the demand wasn't there, the amount of work that goes into putting on a show like that doesn't make sense. It's not, the hosts aren't getting rich. The clubs aren't making tens of thousands of dollars by hosting an event. And the amount of hours and volunteer work that goes into it doesn't compute. The only reason you do it is because that's what the community wants and the demand is there. And so seeing all of these new shows popping up, seeing these workshops and seminars on a regular basis selling out all of the seats. At the national show, I don't know if people heard, but on Saturday, and this may be bringing up some bad feelings, but the building was at capacity for several hours. And so people had to wait outside the building at the entrance for people to leave the show before more can go in because the building hit capacity. And so I left for lunch and I saw people that had been standing in line for 3 or 4 hours to get into the building and they're still outside, and that level of dedication and the fact that it had sold that many tickets is exciting. It's very exciting. And then, you've talked to Jonas and he's doing amazing things with everything that he and Eric are doing with the PBE. And I'm very excited for the industry and the hobby.
Yeah, same. Definitely the number of events popping up and the prices of trees and even just within the East Bay Bonsai Society Club, like we're seeing a really big uptick in membership, even and especially across age ranges. I think we're seeing a lot of younger folks get into bonsai recently too, which I think is a great sign of, you kind of build these cohorts and yes, some kind of drop out, some come in, but I think having a more even distribution of ages in bonsai is only going to be a great thing for the hobby.
Yeah, like you, I thought you were like, 21 years old or something.
A little bit older.
Turns out you're not. A little bit older.
Yeah.
But yeah, so kind of actually you brought back something that's important to me is these events, these bigger shows, there's a time and a place and appreciation for club shows, but these regional or national level shows where the population of trees that are coming in is a little bit more widespread. I think those are very important because, and this is something like Aaron Packer talks about, and I think you and Jonas may have touched on this too, is just having more bonsai appreciators is super, super important because not everybody that visits a bonsai show becomes a bonsai enthusiast or a professional, but every single hardcore bonsai enthusiast or professional found the hobby through an event like that, right? And so even if just a fraction of 1% that attends a show catches the bug and becomes the next Ryan Neal or Jonas or Addison, like that can't happen unless these shows happen. And I believe very strongly of that because even like with Jonas's story, he's second generation. His family owned a nursery, but as close as he was to trees and plant material, he didn't discover bonsai until he was in his 20s. And some dude named Boone happened to walk into the nursery, right? So like that serendipity, we can encourage that or expose more people to that by continuing to have these high level shows and events. And I want to be a part of that. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I mean, and you've shown up and are a part of that. I agree. I've been trying to, with the last PBE, I volunteered as kind of like a little subcommittee leader doing the programs. And I want to be as involved as I can in these types of events so that one day I can help organize them in the future, right? So, hopefully Jonas and Eric and Andrew are happy to do the PBE for the next 50 years. These events I feel are so important to the development of bonsai in the US. Like without a show, I think going back to your earlier point that like bonsai is about display, without a show, you really don't have any funnel for people's energy within the hobby. And also there's not that kind of economic driver for the industry, that like centralized economic driver. So you see the structure in Japan is based around these major shows like Kokufu and Gafuten and Taikon 10. And there's a reason they have so many shows, right? That's what drives the hobby, not just people doing it for their own enjoyment in their backyard, right? Having that aspect of competitiveness and that reason to have your tree looking the best it can be, like that's what enables professionals to make a living, and that's what enables the hobby to reach higher levels, right? Without that kind of engine and industry around bonsai, then the sad fact of the matter is that you're not going to see the level of excellence that people drive to and aspire to, right? Money and competitiveness and interest all drive that like honing of the art as a whole, right? So everything benefits from this kind of rising tide effect.
Yeah. That's actually one of my favorite, Ryan Neal isms is the a high tide raises all ships. Like I do very much resonate with that.
I think that's a general statement, but Ryan
Right.
does
But
have
he
a lot
likes
of
to say,
Ryanisms.
yeah,
Okay.
he likes to say that quite a bit. And I'm a fan of that in its application to bonsai.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I wanted to any advice that you have for other folks that want to enter the bonsai industry from a business perspective? Maybe not as maybe like, directly from your experience related to owning like a company that sells bonsai goods. I'm curious if there's any kind of advice you'd give or thoughts around how people should approach that if they want to.
Yeah. So I think bonsai has a unique opportunity where if you wanted to do it as a side gig, it's totally doable, right? There's are a lot of high level practitioners who dabble in it and they teach workshops or they give presentations at club, events and whatnot, but they maintain a full-time job or a career elsewhere. And so I think that flexibility lends itself very well where you can do many things in the industry to generate income. So whether that's growing trees or selling tools or supplies on the side at club events. So one of my local dealers, a friend of mine, he sells our tools at local events. So at the LA Bonsai Swap Meet events or at the Bonsai-a-thon at the Huntington, etc., or at different club events that he can attend. So he's a vendor there and he sells dry goods or hard goods, supplies. And it's not hard to do, up in the Portland area, Portland Bonsai, His main customer base is the B-stop community. And so like, there are opportunities to either work on trees and do demos and workshops and generate some income. There are opportunities to grow material. We have lots of people down here in Southern California that have a dedicated area in the yard to kind of really grow good starter material, whether it's to just sell outright or to offer to workshops or their own workshops and things like that. So it's not impossible to dabble in it and see if it's a good fit for you and then build on that and then become, make it a more professional full-time thing. Like Todd Schlafer is a great example. He kind of got the bug and he was working for a big company. And after a while, he said, you know what? I like this more. I'm going to take the leap and, look at him now with First Branch, doing really amazing things, and traveling the country and working on client trees and doing all of that as a professional, as a bonsai professional, and maintaining a nursery and doing all the other things. So it's doable, but it's hard. People joke and say, "Oh, if you don't get into bonsai because you want to get rich." Well, you can say that about pretty much any industry, any hobby. When you own your own business, the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it is difficult, but the satisfaction is so good. It's so good. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities, and that's actually one of the things that we do as a company. Like I've spoken to lots of people that are either starting a new nursery or they're starting to do workshops and presentations, and they need a little bit of help with tools or whatever. And I absolutely love to hear that, new people entering the professional sphere, and I will bend over backwards to try to assist in that effort in any way that I can, and in many ways.
That's amazing. And so if someone's running a business and wants to like add a new tool component to their goods, is your business organized in such a way that like someone would buy tools from you wholesale and then they sell them at a price above that wholesale price to their customers, and then they like you make money by selling the tools to them and they make money by selling the profit over the raw wholesale price that they paid? Is that like kind of the general setup of the business, or
Yeah,
how does it work?
that's exactly right. So Joshua Roth, we as a company are purely a distribution setup. The other way to phrase that is we're that evil middleman that everybody likes to poo-poo on, because I'm bringing in products from mostly Japan. We do bring in some products from China and we import them, and then I warehouse them and distribute them wholesale to other retailers. So I'm that middleman that's bringing in goods from another country. I sell it to a nursery, a bonsai professional, whatever, and they then sell it to the retail public. There are other wholesale bonsai tool wholesale companies in the United States. There are several of them, but what makes us unique is that we are purely wholesale. Those other companies will also sell retail. This is purely my personal opinion, is you're in a position now as a wholesaler competing for retail sales with your customers who are the
Yeah,
stores. Does
exactly.
that
So
make sense?
you don't have a DTC component of your
Correct. We do
business.
not sell
You're
direct
not
to the,
selling against your it's not
right.
like someone who buys a business that buys your tools doesn't also have to compete with their customer
Me.
going to your website and buying it directly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel very strongly about that. And the previous owner did as well, because it's true. If I sold directly to retail, I could make 3 or 4 times more money, hands down. And I could probably do it very easily as the manufacturer. It's like going to a Nike store and buying a pair of Nikes versus going to Foot Locker and choosing between Nike and Reebok and Adidas, right? And so the opportunity is there, but we are very intentional about not stepping into that realm. And so that works out in a couple of ways, where if a person emails us and says, "Hey, I want your professional branch cutter, part number, whatever, whatever," what we'll do is ask them where they're at, what part of the country they're in, and we will locate the closest dealer to them and direct them to that dealer, to that retailer. So, for example, if you're in the Oregon area and you're like, "Hey, where can I buy your tools?" I'll send you to one of the many nurseries or retailers in Oregon that has that product. And we have a pretty decent idea of who carries what because of the ordering activity. And so if I know that it's a particular tool that they don't normally carry, I will let the customer and the store kind of work it out, and we can special order, special ship stuff. But at the end of the day, that store is determining what that retail price is going to be, what their margins are going to be above and beyond my wholesale price to them. So that is exactly our model. We are just the middleman, that evil guy that apparently everybody likes to try to save money. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't happen. So the reality of the situation is, a retail customer has a price in mind. So if that's $100 for a branch cutter, they're going to go and spend $100 on the branch cutter. They're not going to think, oh, if I cut out the middleman, I can get that branch cutter for $60. And they're not going to go look for that same branch cutter for $60. They will eventually just buy a $100 branch cutter. And so, the question then becomes on the other side is who's going to make that $100 sale? Is Joshua Roth going to make that $100 sale? Or is my store, my dealer, my customer going to make that $100 sale after buying it from me for wholesale for whatever? And so that's the reality of the situation is cutting out the middleman doesn't always work out the way people envision that it does. What you end up doing is actually just getting an inferior product most of the time.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
anyway,
I mean, I would say that the other thing is you have built this connection with the people that build, you've designed and built these tools in connections with artisans in China and Japan,
right.
right? And so, if you are just an individual business, that might be a difficult connection to make, right? Especially across the breadth of the type of tools that you sell, right? So you definitely
Yeah.
provide value in that sense as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have several products that are OEM to us, made specifically and only for us. And then we do have a bunch of stuff that we sell that are other brands.
Mm.
And we bring them in larger quantities because, for example, cut paste for economy of scale. If I have to order 50 or let's just say 200, jars of cut paste, a typical store doesn't sell 200 jars of cut paste in a year. They may sell 50, right? So it's hard for
Yep.
them to get that discounted price directly from Japan. So that's where I step in and say, okay, I can sell 200 jars of cut paste to 4 stores over a given a year, and kind of lessen that burden of the minimum quantities and the economy of scale and the tariffs. Oh, don't get me started on tariffs,
Yeah, I knew
but
that would
yeah,
be a sensitive subject, but
but it's like people kind of get fixated on the individual price of a product. So, if I'm paying, let's just for a hypothetical, if I can buy a pair of cutters for $20 from Japan, but by the time I ship it here, pay the freight, pay my labor and my warehousing space, that that individual tool didn't cost me only $20. It cost me $40, to put it on a shelf and be able to sell it to somebody. And of course, I need to make some money. I'm not doing all of this for free. So if I end up selling that for $50 or $60 to the store, that's just the way that the economy works. And then the store's got to make their money because now it's taking up space on their shelf and they have bills to pay. They have overhead. So that's $50, $60 pair of cutters are now retailing at $100. And so some people might think, well, if I can go to Japan, I can get that same thing for $20. It sounds nice in theory, but that just doesn't work. And that's not how economy works. That's kind of Mickey Mousing or oversimplifying the process. So, these are the kinds of things that I sleep over at night. But at the end of the day, like I enjoy the position that I'm in this industry and the supply chain where I get to have these connections and interactions and relationships with folks in Japan and China, and then also with the various stores throughout the country. So yeah, anyway, I love everything about it. And I just hope that people can understand that the cost of products are what they are for a reason. And it's not because everybody's trying to get rich. It's definitely not happening.
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, my brother runs a kind of import business in Europe, and it's staggering the amount of fees and tariffs, and yeah, the actual like landed price is way different than
Oh yeah.
what it costs to make. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about tools. Maybe we can start kind of high level, but Joshua Roth, for example, you guys sell like, the professional grade and like there's tiers of tools. What actually does that translate to other than the color looking a little bit different in the metal. What does that translate to? Like, what is the difference between a high quality tool and a low quality tool?
Uh,
Not that any of the ones you're selling are low quality, but I mean, like,
well, but
what runs the gamut, right?
yeah, and that doesn't hurt my feelings to call it a lower quality tool because it technically is. Not everything is equal. And so the differences that I can speak to with our product, well, let me back up. So, I also distribute for other brands. And just to give you an example, there is one brand that we distribute and all of their steel is exactly the same across the entire line. The base metal is exactly the same. At Joshua Roth, the number one differentiation between the different tiers is that base steel material. So what exactly is that steel differs between our novice line, which is the entry level, up to intermediate, up to professional. So the base material, it could be different. And what that translates to is the hardness of the steel or the type of steel it is. Japanese tools, and we didn't really touch on this, but the reason Joshua Roth came into existence 40 years ago was the desire of a man named Joshua Roth to bring high quality tools from Japan and make them available in the United States. 40 years ago, the world was not as small as it is now in terms of commerce, international commerce. And so he recognized, and to this day, some of the best tools, hand tools and power tools come from Japan across multiple industries. Automotive industry, some of the best tools come from Japan. Woodworking industry, best tools come from Japan. Swords and knives, best tools come from Japan. So when it came to cutlery, scissors, shears, cutters, saws, naturally Japan had a leg up. And so Joshua Roth was started with the ethos of let's bring some of that and make it available in the United States. And so that continues to today where Japanese steel is recognized around the world as some of the best base material to start with. And kind of like with cooking, you start with good ingredients if you want to have a nice dish. So you start with good raw material and you already got a leg up. On top of that, with Japanese culture and their view of craftsmanship and standards of excellence, they're again top in the world. Not maybe the literal top, but up there, right? And so that is also just a recognized situation of products coming out of Japan, whether they're cars, computers, TVs, tools again. And so what that translates into is the manufacturing process, the attention to detail, the minimizing of variances and things like that. And again, when it comes to a cutting utensil, those are all things extremely important. And so whether it's the ability for a tool to hold its edge or the ability to be able to be sharpened or maintained, the longevity, all of those things kind of get reflected in the price point of the different tools. And so my recommendation to people is just buy the best tool you can afford. Like I would never suggest somebody that's struggling to put food on the table that if you're not buying a $200 pair of cutters, you're doing it wrong. That doesn't make sense. If you can afford $20 cutters, go buy those $20 cutters. If you can afford $200 for cutters, go buy the $200 cutters because you will get what you pay for. Especially when it comes to things like this, tools, where the material, the craftsmanship, all of those are embedded into the price point.
That makes sense. So there might be, well, I thought your point on the kind of Japanese craftsmanship was interesting. I think, yeah, their culture of revering craftsmanship as well as multiple of the other kind of components of their culture, plus the kind of high quality mixtures of steel that they're using, kind of leads to this perfect storm of high quality tools. Do you think, in your experience, has that changed at all over time? I guess I've seen in bonsai, for example, it definitely feels like bonsai in Japan is, a little bit past its heyday, to say it nicely, I guess. Still amazing artists, and the art is way light years beyond the U.S. But what I've heard from professionals in Japan is like, yes, it definitely feels a little bit different than 20 years ago or something like that, right? And there's some amount of nurseries where, you know, Japanese interest at a younger age is kind of waning for bonsai. So I'm curious if you've had challenges with production in Japan in terms of
We
like,
have.
are they able to keep up with the demand as it's growing internationally?
Yeah, so that is a very real thing. And so probably 2 or 3 times a year as I'm placing orders and communicating with my suppliers in Japan, things just go out of stock or out of design. They stop manufacturing. Part of it is because some of our products come from a very small shop. It's a family owned forgery or, refine, whatever, where they're making the tools and they either go out of business or they stop making particular items because the demand in Japan is not there. So we have to accept the fact that the Japanese tools getting exported is only a percentage of the business for these Japanese tool manufacturers. They rely very heavily, at least in the past, and still now, rely very heavily on local sales. While some of the shears, let's just say, for example, are getting made specifically for us at Joshua Roth, that same factory is, when they're not making scissors for me, making scissors for somebody else. And as that demand dwindles, they're making less, they have less employees, their cost is going up because now they're not buying as much material. And then things get discontinued. Families, a lot of these businesses are family run and the next generation's not interested in taking over. Kind of like what you're hearing on the tree growing side or the nursery side,
Yep.
very much happening on the tool manufacturing side. And then they're also battling with the world getting smaller and other countries stepping up their game, right? And so just to give you a quick example is I got an inquiry from a company in, I think they were in Turkey or Pakistan. And their pitch to me was, we get our steel from Japan. So our steel is Japanese steel. We can prove it, but we manufacture it here, at our ability, and it's high quality. It's high quality stuff. And so now you've got the good stuff, the good ingredients, but being manufactured at a lower labor rate overseas, and Japan has to compete with that. And so it's difficult and it's very complicated, but to answer your question, yes, I have very much experienced on a regular basis this kind of shrinkage of stuff coming from Japan. So
Wow.
it's difficult. I'll say it's difficult, especially for a brand that our claim to fame, it's Japanese tools. And
Yeah,
those options
exactly.
are getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm curious if the bonsai industry in Japan reaches a kind of tipping point at some point where we'll need alternative sources. Hopefully not in our lifetime, but we'll see. I guess the flip side of that is like it gives room for potters in the U.S. or tool makers in the US or different industry to grow here as well, right? If that's not possible. I feel like that connection with Japan and the quality and craftsmanship that you get from Japan is going to be very difficult to replicate, especially within kind of the US culture and definitely within the US cost structure.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, my plan is to be a part of Joshua Roth as long as I can. So whether that's 10 years, 20 years, or 40 years, we'll see. And we'll see what happens in the future. But, I'm open-minded, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm very cognizant of maintaining what the brand is and was. And so my preference would be to continue to bring Japanese products in, under the Joshua Roth brand. But we'll see. Maybe we expand our line and offer products from other places as well.
Yeah, interesting. So, another thing on the tool side, I think there's kind of a classic debate between stainless steel and carbon steel for
Oh
bonsai
boy.
tools. So, yeah, do you want to weigh in on that? What's in your personal tool collection?
So my way in on that is just buy all of the above. Ha ha ha. No,
One of
but
each.
yeah. So again, funny thing. When I was a hobbyist, like I didn't buy good tools. My only Japanese tools that I had in my arsenal were things that I got either in a raffle or in an auction or at a club sale. Another member selling some used tools. I, even as a hobbyist that was in it for 7 or 8 years, didn't really go out and buy quote unquote nice tools. And now I have an entire warehouse full of literally the best tools that I could have ever imagined. But I have a combination of both. Um, and there's pros and cons to both, right? So definitely the stainless steel tools are easier to maintain. I gave a talk at the last two rendezvous related to tools. And my answer is it kind of really depends on the user. If you're the type of person that will, maintain your tools at that high level where you're cleaning them off, wiping them off, drying them out, putting them in the right place after every single use, giving it a quick sharpen, making sure all the sap is off, then the high carbon steel tools are the way to go because they're going to hold an edge a little bit better. They're going to just be um, a little bit more robust versus when you get into the stainless steel product, it is a little bit of a softer metal, meaning the edge won't hold its sharpness as much. You're going to have to sharpen it a little bit more in terms of like if the handle thickness or the blade thickness. It's not going to be able to handle material as efficiently as a high carbon steel. But if you're not the type to wipe down your tools every single use, or sometimes you forget it and leave it out on the bench, investing in a nice stainless steel product is probably a good idea because, I won't lie, I have ruined more than a handful of high carbon tools by forgetting that they were left outside. And it doesn't even need the rain. I'm in Southern California. Like we don't see rain, but just ambient moisture, morning dew, or just a splash from watering the plants. It'll rust overnight. So my answer is all of the above. Just buy whatever you can afford. Buy the good stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't realize that difference between the hardness of the metal. I think that's a pretty succinct way to put it. How you shared that kind of the amount of maintenance that you want to do is really what kind of differentiates those two products.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I tell people because the stainless steel, at least for us, so just to kind of clarify, the stainless steel tools that Joshua Roth sells is the highest tier. It's what we call our master grade. And that is a direct competition with Masakuni and some of these other really high end Japanese tools. And so it's very expensive. Oftentimes it's double the cost of a similar product in carbon steel. So to get that benefit, like, is it worth it all the time? No. But does it make your life easier? Yes. So everybody's going to have to just make their own decision on spending the extra buck. I will say that there are other brands like Ryuga. Ryuga is a brand that Joshua Roth is a distributor of, and that's a product line developed and sold by Robert Stevens. And their stainless steel, or that brand stainless steel product, is way more affordable. I mean, we're talking somewhere around the ballpark of $120 for a typical stainless steel tool, which is a fraction of the Japanese counterpart. But it's a high quality stainless steel product, and it's made to very high standards out of the factory. And I have no problem recommending that. If somebody really wants a stainless steel tool, but they can't afford 260 bucks or whatever for a Japanese tool, give Ryuga a shot. That's why we carry it, and that's why we distribute for Ryuga, is we believe in the product. I wouldn't sell something that is a gotcha, or a gimmick. And Ryuga is a big brand. They're all over the world. If you watch a lot of like UK YouTube videos, you'll see a lot of Robert Stevens products being used all over the world. So, and then I think just a week or two ago, there was a big event in China, and Robert Stevens was one of the big sponsors and headliners for that event. So he's very much still involved in the bonsai community in Asia. And the fact that he puts his name and face behind an entire product line says a lot, right? So,
Absolutely.
another option for folks out there.
Is there an OEM Joshua Roth tool that you think everyone should have in their tool collection, or one that you think has a especially unique story or just is exceptional?
I'm laughing and I'm thinking because our number one product is just a pair of scissors. They're called the Garden Cut Shears. It's a number 130, and 130 SS is the stainless steel version. Very proud of that product because it's in a nice price point. I think they're 30 or 35 bucks or so for a pair of scissors, but really high quality. And I can say that as the OEM, that is a product made for us. It's trademarked and patented. The steel is Japanese, but it's manufactured in Taiwan, and that's how we keep the prices down. But both the stainless steel and the carbon steel versions are Japanese steel, and it's made only for us. So there are many other red-handled scissors that look alike, but ours in particular is just a great general all-purpose garden scissor, great for bonsai or other plants. I use it for my house plant and carnivorous plants and my orchids. It's a great quality, great bang for buck product. And other industries use it as well. If you've heard the podcast with Ken on asymmetry. He mentioned several other industries that use our products, like the automotive industry, for example. There was a mechanic shop that started buying these scissors because they can cut belts, steel line belts and stuff, and it'll cut it clean and smooth every time. So anyway, that's the number one selling product in volume. And, I have no problem being proud of that one. Everybody, I've given it to people to try out in my other plant circles and everybody loves it. So if you haven't seen or heard of it, we're the OG. That is
Interesting.
ours.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pick up a pair of those because
Yeah.
that's a very interesting story behind that tool. And love the uniqueness of it. I'm also looking forward to, you had mentioned at Rendezvous that you're looking to have a set of tool rolls with, your logo on them. And I've had this really old tool roll for a long time that's a little flimsy, so I'm looking forward to upgrading that.
Yeah. We had an issue where as the business transitioned and being on the tail of COVID, the manufacturer of the tool rolls that were being sold in the past was no longer a viable option for us. They couldn't get the same material that we were using, that Joshua Roth was using before, and the manufacturing cost doubled. And so I've spent a couple years now trying to source another or some other tool roll options. We're very, very close. We found a couple of Japanese and Chinese produced tool rolls that we think are of the right quality that we're excited about. And then, like you mentioned, now that we've picked the product, our next step is to get the embroidery, our logo put on it. And maybe this is a spoiler alert, but Joshua Roth is getting a new logo. And at last year's PBE, Jeremiah Lee's Redwood made an impression on me as well as many, many other people. And so I've asked Jeremiah for permission to use an image or a likeness of his tree as the new logo for Joshua Roth. So we're very excited to kind of launch that. It's not public information yet, but probably within the next couple of months, we'll start kind of putting that out there, and that's what's going to be on the new tool rolls.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, definitely going to have to find my local distributor and pick up one of those. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, we'll hook you up.
What a cool story too, to have an American tree on the logo. That
yeah, and that's it's
community.
for many reasons. The origin of Joshua Roth is in the Central Valley, California, which is where redwoods are found. So it's just serendipitously, like, there was this beautiful tree at the PBE, and it was by somebody I admire. I like Jeremiah as an artist, and also his Black Ponder podcast, and so, like, actually the first time we met face to face was at PBE. We had talked on the phone and stuff previously, but, and it made a huge impression. I love it. That tree was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so I feel very lucky that he is allowing us to use that image, going forward as a logo for Joshua Roth.
Well, this has been really fun. I really appreciate you kind of pulling back the curtain on your business and talking to us about your thoughts and the community. Before speaking with you at the Rendezvous, I had no idea, what Joshua Roth was about. I could see your presence in the community, but, meeting you and the kind of, and your wife and the face behind the business and hearing your thoughts, I think is going to be really interesting for folks. And I think inspiring, and to have someone who's this passionate about the community, in the community, I hope that everyone can continue to support you, and we can have the community continue to grow.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything you're doing. I think I mentioned it to you before, but my only regret was that I didn't find your podcast sooner. I've listened to pretty much every episode now, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm very, very glad you're doing this. So I hope you continue to do it as well, and continue to grow.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I was actually inspired by Jeremiah as well to start the podcast. So it looks like he's an inspiration for both of us. So we've got that in common as well.
Yeah, he's an amazing person.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to go clean my tools now. I just picked up the new wire cutters from you at the Rendezvous, and they've been serving me very well. So thank you for that and your sponsorship of the event. Yeah, I would love to hear from everyone listening to this episode. I hope this was an entertaining look at kind of a peek behind the curtain, and would love to hear folks stories about their relationship with Joshua Roth through the years. I think that would be really interesting to hear the history of this long-lived company in the US. So yeah, you're welcome to reach out to me at Teeny Trees for any updates. And John, how should they engage with Joshua Roth or you? What's the right way to reach you?
Well, if you're an end user or a hobbyist, unfortunately, I can't sell directly to you, but what we're trying to do is once we get the new website launch, we're going to push hard on social media. Something I've been kind of dragging my feet on a little bit, but we are present on Facebook and Instagram as Joshua Roth Limited. We do have a website, joshuaroth.com. My recommendation is if you're interested in our tools, let your local nursery or supplier know, whether it's just a working professional that comes and visits, or if you're lucky enough to have a bonsai specific nursery or garden center near you, just let them know like, hey, you guys should carry a bonsai tools. Hit up John at Joshua Roth and we'll make sure we get you guys hooked up.
That's awesome. Thank you, John, and thank you for taking the time, and hope everybody has a good night or a good day.
Sounds good, man.
You're listening to this.
Thanks, Addison.